Hello, and welcome to the third episode of the Depth of Film podcast. I'm Elizabeth. I'm a film major who loves to geek out about movies way too much.
And I'm Emily. I'm an English major, and I love to analyze movies.
And today we're reviewing Clue. So, I don't know where you want to start with this.
Okay, well, we normally do like a brief run-through of the plot. This movie has a pretty complex plot, so we might need to give just like the basic rundown, but not... It also has multiple scenarios for potential endings, so...
Which we're definitely going to have to get into.
Yeah, we will have to talk about that a little bit.
Basically, all of these guests arrive at the house and are greeted by the butler, and they're given pseudonym names that are all colors. Colonel Mustard, Miss White, Miss Scarlet, Miss Peacock, which I guess isn't really a color, but it kind of is. Mr. Green. Is that all of them?
Yvette
is the
housekeeper. Did we miss anyone?
And there's a cook as well.
Yes.
And they find out that they're all there because they've all been blackmailed and received letters to arrive at the house for dinner.
Yes. Yeah, they all received I think it was an anonymous letter, or did they know who the letter was from?
I think it was signed a friend.
Okay. So, pretty anonymous, and the nature of the letter was that it was to settle some kind of financial dispute. And I thought it was kind of interesting that, so they all are invited to this ominous house by an unknown host, and it's just like a kind of creepy, inconclusive letter, and they all come alone. That I felt like that was a little bit unrealistic. Like, if you knew that you had, a secret and that you were being actively blackmailed, and then you get a letter like this, would you... I don't know if I would feel safe to, come to that type of place alone.
Were all of them, except for Miss Peacock, none of them were married besides Mrs. Peacock, I don't think.
Mrs. White was the one who had, the short black hair, right?
Yes.
Well, she had several past husbands.
Yes.
But I don't think she was, currently married.
Yeah. So, I don't know who you would bring.
Yeah.
Because if you involve the police, then that kind of also falls on you, too, about why you're being blackmailed, and none of them wanted to be exposed.
Yeah. I think the fear of being exposed kind of drove a lot of their compliance with the oddities of what was going on, because I just feel like a lot of people would have had much more resistance to no, I'm not going to come to your weird dinner party where you lock the doors and don't explain why I'm not allowed to leave and feed us terrible tasting soup. There was no objections to it. It was just they were scared, and they knew that whoever had invited them knew what they were hiding. So they were I guess we're just going to kind of awkwardly play along for a little bit. The tension was very palpable at the beginning when they're all sitting around the table not knowing what to say to each other. Yeah.
I thought it was odd that they came. If it were me, I don't know if I would go.
Yeah.
It's what else are you going to do? I'm already paying money. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's the fear that if you don't go, that you'll be exposed. But
yeah, I think that's the only like conclusion for why they would come. Because I feel like that sort of invitation can't be something good.
No.
So I guess they were weighing up what is the risk of going versus what is the risk of not going and then having my secret revealed to the public. So yeah, they all have these aliases from the beginning. I thought that was an interesting concept, that like just for a movie in general, or just like a storyline where everyone is going by a fake name, no one knows who anyone else is. It's kind of a common trend for like setting up a mystery of like, let's get all these strangers in one place, but then they're not actually strangers and like they're kind of connected somehow. But the fact that there's this anonymity, I know we talked about that with Murder on the Orient Express, it kind of like adds something to the suspense of it, I guess. Like, nothing is really known about anyone, so you don't really know what anyone is capable of, like good or bad. It
was also kind of interesting because it was like Murder in the Orient Express, where they all, like, you start out thinking they're all just strangers.
Right.
But then you find out that they're all connected in ways, as far as blackmailing, and they're all connected to the government
Politics,
in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at the beginning, they were kind of told not to divulge anything about who they are to each other, but they end up kind of doing it anyway. Like, it kind of started with Mrs. Peacock, because she was kind of the more like outgoing person who couldn't really stand the silence, and she like felt obligated to break the silence, and then she starts kind of indirectly talking about who she is. Like, she lets something slip, like, as the wife of a senator or something like that, and then they're like, you're not supposed to tell us who you are.
I think she said that she was used to hosting dinner parties.
Yeah.
And they kind of put it... Well, Mr. Green was like, I know who you are. Mm-hmm. Because I work in the government, too.
Yeah. So then it kind of came out, like, little basic things about each person's identity. Nothing, like, huge, but just kind of like a snapshot, so we have a bit of an idea about, like, who they are and why they're acting the way that they're acting. Like, I know that I'm struggling to remember all of their names. Miss Scarlet was kind of revealed to be, like a brothel owner or something. Did you get that, like...
Yeah, something
that type
along
of
those
vibe,
lines.
like, and then Colonel Mustard had been one of her customers.
Yes.
So he had come for that. And then Yvette had been employed by her, so I guess she was like a prostitute there. And then, what else did we find out? I guess these are spoilers, but we always do spoilers, so...
Yeah, if you don't know by now...
If you haven't learned your lesson, I guess that's on you. But yeah, watch the movie first before you listen to our podcast, please.
And then come back and listen to our podcast.
Mrs. White had one of her ex-husbands had an affair with Yvette. Yes. So they knew each other. I kind of forget how the others were connected. But not all of them had like necessarily crossed paths, but they all had a certain political presence and some kind of corrupt activity or deceit that they had been involved in the past.
Yes.
That they were trying to not let leak out. And I think, like, that type of group of people also kind of makes for an interesting story, and, like, I guess maybe the type of movie that they were going for with this, because it's like, these are not your typical just, like, regular Joe type of people. Like, they're people of affluence. They're also people who don't really have any scruples about anything. Like, they're okay with corrupt behavior on a daily basis. Like, it's, for some of them, it's how they make their living. And then they're all in one place for a night. So it's kind of like a recipe for trouble, I guess, like putting them all together. So, yeah, I don't know.
All right, so question for you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the color names?
The color names?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even think of that really.
I thought it was interesting because I think it was just kind of like a nod to the fact that they're very colorful personalities.
Yeah.
But I think there was a little bit of like Miss Scarlet is like a Scarlet Woman.
Right.
I think that's the term.
Yeah, okay.
And there's like Mrs. White was very pale.
But she dresses all in black. And she's kind of associated with death because didn't she kill her ex-husband?
Yeah, so maybe that was like ironic.
Yeah, instance of irony maybe, like.
And then Mr. Green was like nervous about everything.
And he was very clumsy and accident prone, which I appreciated. I did like the comic relief that came with that because it would be like a kind of intense moment, and then Mr. Green would just like sit on a table and just have it break for no reason at all. Like, so.
I think there's multiple occasions where they use the clumsiness of the characters kind of to add tension. Like, you know, like the lights come on and Mr. Green like smashes the bottle that's in his hand by accident, and it's just like keeps the tension going.
Right. Yeah.
Where if you stop and think about it, you're like, it's kind of comical that he's this clumsy, but it also adds to the suspense sort of and the tension.
Yeah. I don't know. I did notice some like name symbolism, but I didn't really pay much attention to the colors. I think I was definitely struck by like Mrs. Peacock because I mean she has this like feather headdress thing going on, which was kind of weird. And she is like kind of she seems like a showy person a bit. Like she wants people to know she's used to hosting things and being
up front.
Yeah.
She was the first one to broach conversation.
Right. Yeah. Professor Plum, I didn't really think about that. I don't know. What do you think his name might signify?
Plum is like a dark purple.
Yeah. Maybe lust? Question mark? I don't know.
Maybe.
Well, purple actually signifies like royalty, I think.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't really match. Yeah, I don't know.
I thought it was interesting that they kept the Colonel and Colonel Mustard.
Yeah.
Considering they were trying to be anonymous.
Yeah.
But maybe it would have been odd not to be referred to as a colonel if you're used to it, so.
Mhm. Yeah, I wonder why maybe Mr. Green, because you would think that maybe that would be associated with money or like greed or something, but he was actually the only person there who had pure motives because he ended up being an FBI agent, right? Or something like that.
In one of the endings, yes.
Oh yeah, in one of the endings.
I think in all of the endings, he didn't kill anybody.
He never was guilty of anything. So maybe like, yeah, maybe the green signifies something about his innocence. I don't know.
Mustard, I don't really get the mustard except for the fact that I can totally picture him sitting at a barbecue with a hot dog.
Well, Colonel Mustard, historically, wasn't there a Colonel Mustard?
Was there?
Right? In the Civil War, I think. I believe there was some kind of blunder associated with Colonel Mustard. Now I'm tempted to look it up.
Go for it.
Okay. Colonel Mustard.
I was also thinking that, like, muster is, like, a military word. Like, M-U-S-T-E-R.
Oh.
I'm not exactly... I think it's, like... To muster your troops, I think, means to, like, gather them and get them ready. But I don't really know how that would apply.
Yes. Oh, no. Wait. I made that up. There is no Colonel Mustard in the Civil War. There's a George Armstrong Custer, who might have been who I was thinking of.
Is that like Custer's Last Stand?
Custer. He excelled on the battlefield. He noticed for his daring cavalry charges. Why is he so famous? Yeah, I don't know. So, or maybe why did he lose the Battle of Little Bighorn? Okay, he was defeated at the Battle of Little Bighorn because he made a lot of fundamental errors. So I think this was the guy I was thinking of. Honestly, probably because of Night at the Museum, because I think there's a character in that movie who's playing this guy. But yeah, okay, not really what I thought, but I don't know if it's supposed to have any correlation. Does he make mistakes, Colonel Mustard, in this movie?
He just kind of seems like a very blundering guy.
Yeah.
Just in general.
Yeah. But it is interesting with the names, because they're not super blatant and obvious, but like there's definitely something there.
I was also trying to figure out if there's any kind of symbolism over who got which weapon. I couldn't think of anything really. Because it seemed like nobody actually killed anybody really with the weapon they were given.
Huh. I don't know. I remember Mrs. White got the noose.
Yes.
And Miss Scarlet got the candlestick. Mrs. Peacock got the dagger. The doctor guy, what was his name again?
Plum.
Mr. Plum, he got the gun.
Mr. Green got the steel beam or whatever.
Yeah.
Colonel Mustard got the wrench.
Okay.
I think that's what I don't know tools. I think it's a wrench.
Yeah. So for anyone who maybe saw the movie but isn't, like, remembering everything about the plot, there's a point where they're all gathered into one room, the study, and the man who they think has been blackmailing them the whole time gives them each a quote-unquote present that they open, and he basically says, if you don't want to be exposed, all you have to do is use the weapon I've given you to kill the butler. What was his reasoning behind that? The butler had the key to open the door?
I think Mr. Body said that Wadsworth was the one who knew why they were all there and had the blackmailing. Mr. Body said that if he went to jail, he was going to expose all of them. Mm-hmm. But he said if they killed Wadsworth, he would just let them go. And I guess basically the status quo would stay the same.
Right. I was kind of confused at that point. Like, what would that guy who wasn't even Mr. Body have to gain from...
Well, it depends on the ending that you choose. Do you want to talk about the ending?
I was a little confused about the different endings. There was one that made the most sense to me, which was the third one that we watched.
Yes. That's my favorite, too.
Yeah.
The one where basically everyone killed somebody.
Yeah.
Everybody killed somebody.
Except for Mr. Green.
Who does then shoot
Wadsworth, you're right. He does. He does.
Who in that ending was Mr. Body the entire time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there were a couple of different endings. The first one was that Miss Scarlet was pretty much the main culprit who had them all.
But that she was, like, in cohorts with Yvette, but then killed Yvette, and then killed everyone else afterwards.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then there was the ending that Mrs. Peacock did it all.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was a little unrealistic. Also the one with Yvette, like, being, teaming up with Miss Scarlet, because Yvette was, like, a pretty tiny person, and they had her, like, taking down grown men in a matter of minutes without anyone noticing, and I was just like, is this girl really capable of this? Like, is she some kind of assassin? Like, I don't think so. I don't know.
It felt like they were picking at straws to try and come up with an ending that worked, so that there could be multiple endings.
Yeah.
But it didn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember when our high school did the play Clue. I went to go see it, and I'm trying to remember exactly what the ending was, but I remember I didn't like it as much. It was different it was like similar to the third ending, but slightly different, and it bothered me. I don't remember what was the difference.
Yeah.
It's gonna bug me.
I think this would be like a kind of fun show to do as a play because it is like so dramatic and like such big personalities that are coming out. So that was probably like a fun
It was very comical,
show
yes.
to put on or watch. But yeah.
Especially with like in the play, at least in our high school's version, they really like made fun of the fact that like all of these grown men and women are like running from room to room, like in this funny way.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like little kids, like on an Easter egg hunt,
Yeah.
a scavenger hunt. Like, oh, we're gonna go there now, and they all run.
Yeah. Yeah. When he was retracing his steps, Wadsworth, I didn't really see the point of like them actually physically having to be in each room, other than just for like the comedic effect of like they're running all around.
That was so
like,
funny though. And he kept beating up on poor Mr. Green.
Yeah, Mr. Green.
I love at the beginning too when he says "sit" to the dogs and Mr. Green sits.
Aww. He was a good character. I did like Mr. Green. Okay, what did you think? I wanted to know what you thought of the opening scene, because I feel like there's always like kind of an initial reaction, at least as I'm kind of like watching you like in my peripheral vision at the opening scenes of movies, like you'll kind of jot something down. I don't know, I had thoughts on it, but I wanted to know what you thought.
I was thinking about, because I knew that the director who did Knives Out was heavily influenced by Clue.
Huh. Okay.
So I was kind of interested. It was interesting to see the German Shepherd. I think they're German Shepherds. Don't kill me. I don't know
I
dogs.
don't know what kind of dogs they were either.
But I'm pretty sure they were German Shepherds, which I'm pretty sure are the same dogs that were running down the hill at the beginning in that opening shot of Knives Out. Except obviously they were just like at the house and Wadsworth just feeds them some meat.
Right. They don't play a role really in the plot. Besides like that one room with the glass windows that the guy tries to escape through at first, and he's like, you can't go out here because the dogs.
Okay, I want to come back to that.
Yeah.
Because that bugged me. But back to the opening scene.
Okay.
Also, I think I said in the Knives Out podcast that the house in Knives Out was inspired by the house in Clue.
Okay.
And if you looked at the architecture, that shot where they had the house up at the hill, it was a very similar looking.
It was.
On the exterior, and they kind of had that shot of like the creepy house on the hill. Mm-hmm. I also thought it was interesting that we started with the car going to the house instead of in Knives Out, where like the main plot is how
she's trying to leave
the house in the car.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting.
Huh.
Plus they just used rain to set the mood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And thunder.
Yep. Yeah, I was kind of going to talk about that, basically like just agreeing the setting does a good job of setting an ominous mood. It's dark, it's nighttime, there's wind and rain, there's leaves blowing around, and it's just like a very like spooky type of feel. Like it kind of reminded me of have you ever seen The Haunted Mansion, like the Disney movie with Eddie Murphy?
I have not.
Okay, it kind of reminded me of that for some reason, but yeah, basically the same sense of like this scary, decrepit house. It wasn't really decrepit, I guess, in this case. It was more of like a mansion, but the creepy house on the hill.
I feel like it wouldn't be a creepy house if it wasn't during a thunderstorm and a murder mystery.
It might just be like kind of antiquated and like, because it was in the 50s. It took place the movie wasn't made in the 50s, but in the beginning it says like 1958 or something.
Oh, does it?
So the house doesn't really match the time period that it's taking place in. It's supposed to be like a big old house, but maybe it wouldn't be scary if they didn't like set that stage for it.
I thought it just was a cool big house.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird that it had all the secret passageways and stuff. Okay, question. Then we can go back to the dog thing.
Okay.
At one point, Wadsworth says that it was a friend's house. So is this not Mr. Body's house?
I think he was...
Or was he lying at that point?
I think he was maybe lying to give a reason for how he knew the house so well or something.
That was the other thing that confused me, because, like, they also show him, like, sometimes he's like, oh yeah, there's a lounge with a phone right over here. But then other times, like, there's a scene where he's, like, opening doors at random looking for something in the dark, and he, like, pulls on the shower, and he's, like, in the shower, and it's like, wouldn't you know there's a bathroom there?
True.
So, like, do you know your way around the house, or don't you? Because if you were a butler here, or if you were Mr. Body living here, surely you would know the house like the back of your hand.
I think my interpretation of that was because I liked the third ending the best, where Wadsworth was the one kind of like the mastermind behind it all, and he was truly Mr. Body. He had brought everyone there, and it was his scheme. I interpreted those scenes, especially like watching this movie again after having watched it and seen that ending before, as like him having like feigned ignorance kind of to like throw the others off, because like he would kind of disappear off to the side for a moment sometimes, and then he would come back and something crazy has happened, and he always had this very, very shocked and like empathetic response that seemed a little like he was playing it up to me, like trying to fit in with the group and be one of the ones who had no idea what was going on, but really he knew exactly what was going on.
Okay.
So that was my interpretation of his behavior, I guess.
So your interpretation is he is Mr. Body, he does live there.
Yes.
And he just
pretended from time to time that he didn't know, oh, this passageway leads here, as to not incriminate himself, I guess.
Okay.
That was my take. I don't know.
Okay, so back to the dogs.
Okay.
They're different dogs. In the scene where Mr. Body runs, and he goes, and the dog comes jumping up with a glass window, it's a different breed of dog. Was it not?
Really? I did not take notice of that, really. I
thought it was like a German... Again, I don't know dog breeds, but I think it was like a German Shepherd and then like some sort of like Rottweiler or something. With something with very short hair.
Aren't Dobermans like kind of known for being like aggressive? Because I thought of that breed.
I'm just throwing a guess out here. I don't know
Doberman
the actual
breed.
I'm looking it up. It was like a black furred dog. Short black furred dog. Yes.
Yeah. So that's what I thought of when I saw the dogs the second time, but I didn't really notice that much about what they looked like the first time. I think because I was kind of distracted by like I was like, he just brings home like raw meat and gives it to the dogs regularly, like that's what I was thinking about in that scene, that he like has to buy actual meat for them all the time, it seems, just to like keep them at bay. But I don't know what kind of dogs they were.
I thought that was a pretty dramatic tension setter.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
They eat raw meat. Okay, cool.
And this is just routine for them.
Also with the dogs, like how many times did Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet find secret passageways that took them outside?
Actually outside?
It seemed like they were outside.
I think they were in that same glass room.
Oh, so they weren't actually...
They weren't actually outside. I remember noticing the glass windows like almost every time they ended up somewhere that looked like they were outside. So I think it either kept bringing them back, or maybe there were a couple rooms that were like that, where it wasn't an actual like exit. But
I think in my brain I saw the glass windows and I thought they were on the other side of the glass windows.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know, maybe
I don't know.
If we rewatch it, it would be more clear. But that bugged me.
Yeah.
It was a little unclear where they went.
Mm-hmm.
Plus there were so many secret passageways to keep track of.
Yeah.
Where they went where.
The layout of the house was kind of confusing.
It felt a little stretched to say that all of the people trying to kill these people would have found all of these secret passageways just by chance.
Yeah.
Or known they were there. to use them to do all the murders, but...
Right. How would they have known yeah, I was kind of thinking about that, too, when they were giving the scenarios of either Mrs. Peacock being the one to blame or Miss Scarlet. Like, they could be super smart, but this entire scheme for one person to pull off with the 6 murders would have been insane. Like, to be acting with that much precision and not letting on at all that you had just killed multiple people... And knowing the layout of the house. Like, I think that's why I like the one with the butler so much, because it seems like his character is the only one that type of, like, precision and detail could, like, fit with.
I mean, in that explanation, though, it still said that basically all of the guests killed somebody.
Yeah.
So they all, like, found a way into all these locked rooms constantly anyway.
That's true.
And found their way around the house. But at least they only found, like, one way.
One way and one way to kill, like, one person. That seemed more reasonable than someone taking on, 6 killings in one night.
I would say the Miss Scarlet one gets a little more credence in that way, because if she was working with Yvette. Yvette. The first time I was so sure they said Babette, and I, like, wrote down in my notes, I'm like, is that a, like, Beauty and the Beast reference, or did Beauty and the Beast take this from... Because there's, like, the feather duster, anyway.
I don't know.
Because if Yvette knew the house and was working with Miss Scarlet, it would make sense that she would be able to use the passageways.
Yes. That's true.
Even though I don't like that explanation.
Yeah, less likable. One thing that I definitely noticed, this is kind of a random point, but, was just the, like, juxtaposition of the record player. The song that was playing was Life Could Be a Dream, and they're in a house where 6 people have just been killed, and, like, it keeps coming on at random times, and, like, and then by the end, like, at the beginning, they're all kind of sitting around, like, having their hors d'oeuvres and their drinks and stuff, and, like, kind of feeling nervous, but, like, things are still pretty light considered to, like, where they get by the end.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, by the end, the record player kind of, it sounds like it's dying. Like, it's, like, kind of, the sound is, like, becoming more distorted, and, like, the notes are, like, slanty kind of sounding. So I'm not really quite sure how that happened, but it matched, like, the shifting tone of the plot, I guess. So I did notice that.
Maybe it's because the power kept going on and off.
Oh, yeah, that
might have been part of it.
Yeah.
I did notice that the music would turn off when anytime the power went out, but then it would come back on when the power went back on.
Yeah. And that also serves a purpose, because pretty much, like, many of the times that the power would go out, someone else would be killed. And then so to hear that song come on of, like, Life Could Be a Dream right after yet another person has been added to the death toll for the night, like, that definitely serves a purpose of, like, irony.
Okay, question. I feel like I say this 5 times an episode.
Question.
So, the person that they think is Mr. Body, but according to the ending that we like best, was the butler. I guess in that case, the story that Wadsworth told them about being blackmailed was what happened to his butler. But in which case, why would the butler play along?
I don't know. I wondered about that too. Like, what would he have to gain from bringing them all there, supposedly, like, pretending to have done that, and then pretending that he was Mr. Body, and then telling them to kill his boss. Unless he didn't like his boss, and he thought they were actually going to kill him. But it seems like his boss put him up to it, so...
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I also found it very weird, because whether you consider him being actually Mr. Body or being Wadsworth in that scenario, it's weird that he, like, immediately tries to run and then is like, oh yeah, I had this whole planned out that I'm going to give you guys all these gifts and everything, and I knew this was coming.
Right.
And it was
Yeah,
like...
that doesn't really match up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
That didn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Also, he just looked so creepy.
He did look creepy, but I thought, like, kind of interestingly, because he plays an important part at the beginning, because you think that he's, you know, the, I guess, con type of guy who's making money off of their secrets and everything. And, like, physical appearance-wise, he kind of matched that, but, like, I thought of everyone, his acting wasn't that great. Like, it wasn't that believable or something. I don't know. What did you think about him?
He felt odd the entire time. Like, nothing he did makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, he came and he was like, why are all these people here? And then he was like, oh yeah, I was in on the plan. I got you guys all these weapons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Something about his delivery of, like, what he was saying, it just felt like a little forced or something that I was just like, it made sense that he wasn't in the movie for the long term, because I thought he wasn't, like, one of the strongest actors, I guess. I don't know.
Though I guess if you were a butler trying to act as your employer, then maybe
it
you
would seem fake a little bit.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I don't know. Did you have anything else, like, analysis-wise that you wanted to talk about? Or questions?
I thought it was odd that the dogs were hostile to the man that we think is Mr. Body.
I was under the impression of, like, they're just hostile towards everyone.
Because they're definitely not hostile to Wadsworth. Of course, he has meat.
They are, because he has the meat. That's the only reason that he doesn't even really go near the dogs. He, like, tosses it to them from a distance.
Okay.
So I think they're just a scare tactic. Like, that's the role that they play. I don't know. That was my impression. Like, they're not really friendly toward anyone. They're
okay,
like
that makes
they're
more
like
sense.
Guard dogs for the house and for the purpose of keeping everyone in the house.
It also still bugged me that Wadsworth had the key, and none of them went for the key. Like,
yeah.
According to the ending that we liked, Colonel Mustard took the key at one point, but he didn't leave. He just used it to kill the other guy and then stayed during the chaos.
There were several things, I think, with this where there was just this, like, need for suspended disbelief, because, like, with how many of them were there as guests at the party? Like,
there were six. Yeah.
So, like, 6 of them could have easily overpowered Wadsworth and just gotten the key and left. But then there would be no story.
Yes.
But they could have done it if they wanted to. Like, they wouldn't have had to even really hurt him that bad. They probably could have just, like, held him down. Like,
yeah.
But I don't know.
Do we want to go on to our, like, personal review?
Critique portion? Yes. Okay. All right. So Elizabeth and I had, like, kind of different stances on the movie as a whole. So I guess,
I liked it.
Yes. Elizabeth liked it. I was not a huge fan. So we'll each be representing very different perspectives on, like, what we thought of the movie. Do you want
I will say,
start?
I think it's a fun sort of, like, maybe not, like, young kids murder mystery, but I feel like it's definitely, like, a movie you could sit down with the family in general.
In general?
It's fun. There's some funny moments. They always relieve the tension with some idiotic, like, clumsy moment or stupid lines. Colonel Mustard has some where, like, the moment where he's arguing with Wadsworth about whether there's somebody in the house.
Yes, that was kind of funny. There's
also just a ton of, like, great, like, sarcastic lines and, like, puns. As
the double negatives thing, right? Is that what you're talking about when they were talking about, is there someone in the house? And he wouldn't give him a straight answer. He kept saying, like, no, but I intended no to mean yes. And, like...
Well, Colonel Mustard kept giving him, is there a person in the house or isn't there? And it's like, how do you answer that question?
Right. Yes and no.
But the other characters made a lot of, like, kind of sly remarks that were kind of puns.
Right.
That also cracked me up.
Mrs. White, there was one moment that I did think was really funny when Mrs. White, I guess it had just been revealed that she killed Yvette, at least in this scenario of the story, because she was jealous that Yvette had been with her ex-husband. And she was just saying in this, like, super calm, like, monotone voice, she was like, I really hated her. Like, when I looked at her, flames were just coming out of my head. Like, she said it in this voice with, like, no inflection at all. And I thought that was really funny, like, their delivery of that. But
I thought, okay, I thought it was funny, but I did think it was, like, very out of character. And I don't know if that was just, like, the whole time she's playing the very serious, and she's just, like, having this weird, like, crisis where she's trying to explain something and just, like, can't.
Yeah.
It just keeps repeating it.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, what in the world is going on here?
I think that's why I thought it was funny, because it was just, like, so unexpected from her. Like, she seemed like a very quiet and, like, subdued person the whole time. And then she just came out with this, like, description of her wrath and anger and, like, I don't know.
It feels weird that, like, that would be what rattled her, though, when she's like, oh, yeah, like, I killed my 2 husbands, like, with, like, no problem.
That's true. Would she have actually been jealous? Because it seems like she kind of goes through men, like, very easily. Like, that was the character that they painted for her, like, men are, or, like, her husbands were, like, expendable, or, you know, like, she didn't seem very fazed, but maybe that was supposed to be an act. I don't know.
So anyway, I thought it was fun. Yeah. Oh man, I gotta stop hitting this microphone. Okay. I thought it was fun. Can you tell I talk with my hands? I keep hitting my microphone. I thought it was fun. I think it's funny. I think it's a good family film that doesn't take itself too seriously. Obviously, you shouldn't murder people. But
take home lesson.
This is a
for
movie.
The fam.
It's meant for entertainment. So the fact that they were making light of it didn't bother me that much, because it was done in, like, a fun way.
Yes.
Those are my thoughts.
Okay, so my thought was... Okay, first of all, I think part of the problem is, like, that it just wasn't, like, my type of humor necessarily. Like, this was a lot of humor based around, like, foolishness and, like, kind of shenanigans, like, that you're like, people probably wouldn't actually act like this, rather than, like, clever or, like, witty humor. Like, there was a little bit of that, but it was mainly like, we're running here, we're running over here, and, like, I don't get into that type of humor as much. So that was part of it for me. And then part of this also was, like, the reactivity of the characters, which drives that type of humor, is very, like, they're kind of, like, senselessly reactive. Like, they just have these overblown, like, responses to things that are kind of unhelpful. Like, when Mrs. Peacock, like, she thinks she just drank a cup that could be poisoned, and then she just starts screaming about it. And, like, that was kind of funny, that scene, but, like, stuff like that throughout, where, like, they're in this crisis situation and they keep having, like, utterly unhelpful and, like, kind of, like, disruptive reactions to what's going on. I guess that was part of what was supposed to be funny, but that was, like, to me, it was like, alright, this is, like, kind of unrealistic, because, like, if people were actually in this scenario, I feel like they'd be trying to figure out, like, are our lives in danger? Like, there would be no time for this, like, this display to go on, you know? But, I don't know. So that was my take on, like, the humor.
I feel like, the fact that it was so over the top was what made it okay for me.
Yeah.
Like, if they had just been, like, making fun of, like, you know, the fact that there's, like, dead bodies and stuff, like, super, like, callously,
yeah,
that would have bothered me. But the fact that it's, like, so over the top that they're, like, it's so obviously satire.
Yeah.
made it funny to me.
Yeah. That's fair. And then I don't know. I feel like I always come in with the moral, like, standpoint. But I guess I think about that a lot when I'm watching a movie or going to watch a movie. So, like, I didn't like the profanity. And then also, I felt like the women were kind of objectified, like, especially Yvette. Now, I get it. Like, she was kind of like a sex symbol. Throughout the movie, there's a lot of flirting with Yvette. There's a lot of insinuations of, like, the men want to be alone with Yvette. And part of that is necessary because she's supposed to be, like, she's supposed to have been a prostitute. So, like, you have to set up that character a bit. But I just felt like they went a little too far, maybe for the purpose of humor, but, like, I'm not really okay with that type of humor of, like, men getting handsy with the women that they don't even know, and, like,
they did do that with Miss Scarlet.
Yeah, they did that a lot with Miss Scarlet.
I wasn't a huge fan
and
of
it was kind of like, okay, like, you've known her for 5 seconds, like, cool it. I don't know. And then there was also, like, some sexual humor going on that I wasn't a fan of. Yeah, just kind of like that, like, irreverent tone. I don't know.
I could definitely see that, yeah.
And then there was also, now I don't want to get, like, too controversial, but yeah, there was also, like, a bit of joking about, like, homosexuality, and, like, I'm not going to get into, like, anyone's perspectives on, like, lifestyle or anything, but I just thought, regardless of that, that's not really something that you should joke about. Like, I don't know, like, at the end when he's like, the one ending that we saw when he's like, I'm gonna go home and sleep with my wife, it's like, okay, so this is the guy who has been pretending to be homosexual the whole time, and then you find out he's not at the end, and it's supposed to be, like, this funny reveal of, like, oh, he wasn't, but, like, I don't know, I felt like they were kind of, like, making a joke about something that
it felt out of place and not needed.
Yeah, you shouldn't be joking about. I don't know. So that was kind of my take on that. Yeah, and I'm not just making it like a men thing either when I talk about, like, the objectification. Like, it was the women, like, I mean, the women characters were dressed very provocatively, like, very overly revealing attire and stuff. So, like, yeah, it wasn't just men, like, making these comments. Like, the women kind of, I guess, objectified themselves in a sense by, like, being okay with that type of thing. But yeah, I don't know. So that was my list of things that I was like, this doesn't sit well necessarily. Definitely any movie that takes the Lord's name in vain, I'm going to be like, I do not approve of that. So yeah, I don't know. From the moral standpoint, that's what I have to say. But I think it was definitely supposed to be, like, goofy and not taken very seriously, like, on the whole. So, like, if you like that sort of movie and that sort of humor of just, like, pure, like, goofiness, this doesn't make sense, it's not supposed to, it definitely was that feeling. And, like, there definitely were moments where I was like, okay, they've done this well, like, and I was laughing at different parts. But then certain parts, I was like, that's too much for me to be okay with or something. So it's kind of like, where is your line, I guess.
So would you say this is your least favorite of the movies we reviewed?
So far we did Knives Out, Murder on the Orient Express, and Clue. Yeah, I think I would say this was my least favorite. Like, it was a lot more, like, a lighter tone than the other two. But I think I would say it was my least favorite.
I think I don't like it as much as Knives Out. I think it kind of depends on my mood, whether I would go Murder in the Orient Express or Clue, just because Clue is a little bit more comical and Murder in the Orient Express is a little more serious.
Yeah, that's true. Murder on the Orient Express, I feel like you have to be very focused to watch it. Like, it's not really a, like, oh, let's sit back and chill. It's like, I was really, like, holding on to every part of the plot to try to figure out, like, the background details and stuff.
I thought Murder on the Orient Express was a little bit more well done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the plot makes a lot more sense, obviously, with an Agatha Christie novel behind it. That helps. And I think the cinematography and stuff was maybe a little bit more clever.
Mm-hmm.
And it was definitely more modern, so that might be part of it, too.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think I enjoyed watching Clue more. I think it's funnier.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of depends on... I feel like it's a toss-up between those two for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and Knives Out, I feel like, is in, like, some kind of category of its own, because it's definitely unlike most mystery movies. Like, the structure of it.
I think Knives Out had a good combination of the humor and the
Yeah,
great characters.
I would agree.
Just being very well thought out with the plot.
Mm-hmm.
Clue, I feel like needed another rewrite. Like, just needed a little something. There was too many things that didn't quite line up.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that I realized was they were trying to be vague so that they could have the different endings, but it didn't quite work for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's close. I think the third ending, where the one we've been talking about, where Wadsworth was Mr. Body all along and everyone killed somebody, made the most sense. But I think there's still plot holes.
Mm-hmm.
And that bugs me a little bit.
In Clue, you mean? There's
in
still...
Clue,
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that about the plot holes. There were some things where it was just like, okay, we have to just accept this, but, like, it doesn't necessarily line up or something. I felt like also, and this could just be me, like, I have trouble at the end when they're, like, with any mystery movie, if they're going through, like, the big reveal of, like, here's how it happened, if the delivery is too fast, like, Wadsworth, he's speaking so rapidly, and it's probably also to add to the comedic effect of them running around and stuff, which I'm fine with that, but, like, I almost wanted to, like, pause it and be like, wait, okay, do I understand what he just said here? Like, it was a lot in that reveal for me to, like, wrap my head around, and I think it kind of went over my head a little bit, like, for at least some of the scenarios.
It definitely also seemed like they could have done a little bit more of, like, cutting back and, like, showing you what he's talking about, rather than just trying to get it all from the words he's spitting out of his mouth in rapid fire mode. So
I think maybe they did that in some of the other movies, like maybe they definitely did in Murder on the Orient Express. You had, like, Poirot, right? That's his name, explaining what happened, and then you had a visual on the screen flashing back to when it had actually happened and how. And that was very helpful for me to understand and, like, kind of connect, okay, I can see that happening, versus with this, and it might be just because it's, like, a little bit, like you said, like, less current, like, a little bit outdated, that maybe they didn't have the means to do that as much within the film, but there wasn't much, like, visually flashing back and forth in time. It was all just, like, by Wadsworth's verbal recollection of what had happened.
Yeah, and I think Knives Out did it almost even better with the little bits at a time and then cutting back to the current day to see how that play out. I think that was well done. It was hard. It was easy to keep track of. It's like, oh, we're back to the past now. We're getting the next snippet.
Yes.
And now we're back to the present with that, knowing that information. So
yeah. I don't know. Was there any last closing remarks that you have, or, like, would you recommend this movie to other people?
I would recommend it for, like, a fun, lighthearted murder mystery. If you're into that, into the comedy, I think it's good for that. If you're looking for, like, the masterpiece mystery that, like, everything fits together perfectly, it's not quite there. Yeah. But I think it's also a classic kind of in the mystery movie genre. So I think it's worth a watch just for that. Plus, if you like the Clue game, it's just kind of fun to see it all play out with the characters.
On a screen. That's true. I've never actually played Clue, so I don't know. Maybe my feelings would be...
I've never played the original Clue game.
A little bit different.
I played Simpsons Clue at a Christmas party once, but...
Yeah. Yeah, all right, well, I think if that's all we have, we'll wrap it up. But for the next podcast, we are planning on doing Death on the Nile, which is another movie adaptation of an Agatha Christie novel, and it's with the same guy who plays Poirot in Murder on the Orient Express.
And spoilers, Emily really likes it.
I really liked it, yeah. I have a lot to say already, so it's going to be good if we do get to do it. But, yeah. I really loved a lot of the symbolism that they bring into it, so...
So tune in next time for Death on the Nile.
Yeah.
And we'll see you then.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. Oh, also, if you are listening and you're still here, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel or Spotify or whatever medium you're using to listen.
So you don't miss the next podcast.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Probably one of more awkward endings. But
yeah. That's okay. Thank you and bye.
All right.